Hey everybody, it's Terry with Romero Pictures Indie Brigade Drone Cav. I hope you've been enjoying some of my videos, and today we've got kind of a fun one to talk about. Talk about a pretty important piece of hardware on your drone, and that's the gimbal. And you might already be familiar with gimbals, and you may have got some experience using handheld gimbals or ground-based gimbals. The gimbals on drones are a little bit different, even though they're very similar in what they do as far as keeping your camera stabilized. There's a few particulars because they are tiny, so there's some things to be aware of with the miniaturized components and the way they are actually controlled. But right off the bat, one of the first things that is responsible for killing so many gimbals is a simple thing that makes you just slap yourself on the forehead as soon as you do it. I've done it. Everybody with a drone has probably done it. It is forgetting to remove the gimbal cover, the gimbal guard. Most drones have this. If it doesn't have it, I recommend you get an aftermarket one. What that does is it secures the gimbal in place, so when you carry it around, you pack it in your bag, you're banging it around, whatever, it protects the gimbal. It gives it, of course, a physical protection barrier, but it also keeps it from just bouncing around all loose. But it's important to have that off. A lot of obvious reasons. You don't want to get in the air, realize all of a sudden your camera is not working, your gimbal's not working, and you have to come back in and land and make the correction. So you've wasted time there and potentially damage your equipment. But most just pop right off, and that's about all there is to it. Just a couple little clips and it comes right off. Now, another thing to be aware of is the gimbal goes through a bit of a calibration when you first power up the drone. That means it takes a reading of its orientation, its position. You should have it sitting flat on level ground so it can read the level, and it goes through a self-check. It moves around, it swings around, and make sure it's operational. If it has a problem, it'll usually send you a message on your controller that there is a gimbal error. So that's another reason you want to have that cover off, because when it does that self-calibration, it moves a full range of angles. Tilt, roll, pan, it moves around every angle it can do to make sure that it's ready to operate correctly when it's in the air. So that's another good reason to have that off there, besides the obvious. Now, in one of my last videos, I talked about, and I showed a big landing pad, a big orange circle cloth pad that I put down. And I mentioned one of the reasons for that is to keep sand, dirt, dust, things like that from kicking up into the lower parts of the drone. Now you can see there's a lot of little areas there, nooks and crannies, stuff can get into. But I'm going to get kind of close here, so maybe you can see how tiny the gimbal really is on this thing, and the potential for getting just a speck of sand or something up in one of these motors could really cause some damage, because you're going to create friction grinding around there. Again, it's like any other piece of quality camera equipment. You want to keep sand, you want to keep dust and dirt away from it and out of it. Now, most drones of this caliber are going to have a 3-axis gimbal. That's going to control all 3 of your axes, your vertical, lateral, and longitudinal axis. But you don't have full range of control for all 3 of those axes. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, from your controller, you don't have the ability to, for example, move the camera back and forth like this very much, or control the roll. What the gimbal's purpose on a drone is to keep that camera stable, because the aircraft is going to be doing a lot of the work for you. So, for example, say you want to pan left and right. You're not going to pan the camera or the gimbal left and right. You're going to rotate the aircraft. It's called yaw. You're going to yaw that aircraft left or right, and that's going to give you that angle that you want. Now, as far as roll, when you're moving the drone left or right, for example, you're flying left or right, to move a drone in any direction, it has to have pitch. So it will pitch to the left, pitch to the right, whatever. So obviously, if that camera were fixed, what would it do? You would have a tilted horizon. You'd lose that level horizon line. That's where that axis motor on the gimbal keeps the camera stable. Now, you do have control of tilt, so you can tilt the camera up or down. How is this useful? Well, it's lots of different ways. If you want a top-down shot, you can pitch the camera straight down 90 degrees and just hover the drone, and you're going to get that nice nice straight down shot. If you want just that top down shot, that's good for say driving over a highway or flying over a highway where there may be a car driving. Something you want to get that kind of nice, clean, straight down shot. Now, the typical range of camera motion is going to be 0 degrees to 90 degrees. Now, some gimbals will even allow a little bit of an upward pitch, maybe 5 or 10 degrees. So, why does that exist? Well, say you're flying forward and you want that shot forward along the front leading edge of the drone. Well, again, if a drone is moving, if it's moving forward or, again, any direction, it has to pitch. So as that drone pitches, the camera, I hope you can see this, the camera has to pitch up slightly to stay level. So that is where that over allowance range in the upward pitch of motion comes into play. Now, another thing to be aware of, you've probably seen this or maybe even encountered it. If you pitch too much, you're going to get the props in the corner of your shot. That happens when flying fast. The faster you fly, the more pitch the drone has. So the gimbal will try to do its best to stay level, stay even, but chances are you're going to get a little bit of prop in the upper corners of your shot. That's just something you have to kind of work with, work it into your shot, fly slower, change your gimbal angle to keep it down, to keep those props out of the shot. Now, interestingly, there's been a couple interesting approaches in drones come out recently. A company called Parrot has a model called an Anafi. It's not a very expensive drone. It's about a $600 drone. It doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles and features that a model such as this does, but it has a unique gimbal. I don't have one, or I'll show you. But the gimbal is sort of lives in like a notch here. If you can imagine this being cut out, sort of like a horseshoe. And the gimbal has a 180-degree range, so you can pitch the gimbal straight up, swing it all the way straight down, so you can get a straight up shot. That may be useful, say if you're on the underside of a structure, like maybe a bridge, you want to get a straight up shot there. That's kind of cool. Again, as far as the aircraft itself, I've kind of read mixed reviews on it. It's pretty good. Some people love it, some people aren't too thrilled with it. Again, it's not a really expensive drone. It does shoot in 4K. Might be an interesting starter drone. Again, that's all the information I have on it. I'm not really endorsing it or saying one way or another, but it is interesting that it does have that range of gimbal motion, and we may see that in other drones coming down the road. So the last thing I want to touch on is ND filters. I'm going to do a whole section on that, a whole episode on that, because that's a pretty important thing. But an ND filter is basically a piece of opaque glass that just reduces the amount of sunlight hitting the sensor on the camera. So that's important for motion blur, and is really useful on a drone because, again, you're going to be up at altitude. A lot of times you're going to get a lot of different opportunities to shoot different things in motion, whether it be cars, animals, people, of course, all kinds of different situations. So that's something useful. Most of the ND filters, set this guy down. Most ND filters come in a little case. A lot of different brands. This, I believe, is Freewell brand. Polar Pro is another common brand. They make camera accessories and all that. And the ND filters just pop right on to the drone camera. Just right on. Now, they, depending on the drone model, they may have a little bit of a magnetic attachment that holds them on. Another popular brand, the DJI Mavics, they sort of press on. This is another thing I like about the Autel Evo that I fly. The Evo has a threaded attachment. So, why is that good? Well, the press-on ones, you can get them on, as you can imagine. You might not get them on quite straight. It might not be quite even on there. Well, that can throw off the balance of your gimbal. If that's on there when it does the calibration process, it can throw you a gimbal error. It can say something's out of balance. Or even the thickness of the glass in the ND filter, even though these things, I mean, you can barely feel them. I mean, they're so lightweight. That can still be enough to throw the balance of the gimbal off. So, it's best to not put these on until after your gimbal has run through its calibration. Now, again, the exception is the threaded filter. The camera, right out of the box from Autel, has just a clear glass filter on it already. It spins off, these spin on, and they don't have the same effect as far as throwing the balance off, because there's no chance you can get them on there sideways. Obviously, unless you cross thread it, then you're going to know that. You're going to feel it. So you're going to know that's not on there correctly. But being able to have this seated on there nicely, again, advantages. It's more secure. You know, it's not going to be off up in the air, and it's just a nicer way to attach it overall. Again, it's a very professional piece of equipment, so it does have the benefits of stuff like this. So anyway, I look forward to getting into that ND filter. I'm having to hold myself back because I'm wanting to just tell you everything about ND filters, but that belongs in a whole separate episode. So we'll talk about that next, and I think you'll find some interesting things out about ND filters. Anyway, the takeaways: be sure, as part of your pre-flight checklist, to take your gimbal cover off. Second, make sure it's not obstructed by anything, but when you press that power button and it starts swinging around to do its calibration. Third, always use a landing pad to keep dirt and garbage from getting up in those motors. And those three things are going to help prolong the life of your gimbal, give you really good photographic and video results in the air. And so there you have it. Thank you for watching. Again, I'm a mentor here on the ND Brigade. If you'd like to talk about anything, cameras, gimbals, drones, controls, anything to do with aerial cinematography, let me know. Also, anything about getting your FAA certificate, I'm happy to help with that too. And so anyway, thanks for watching. Look forward to hearing from you, and have a great day and fly safe.